Hey there, good people, and welcome to another episode of The Finnovator. I'm Stuart Bell, and today I wanted to share an episode which is kind of a combination between a kind of training module, but more importantly, it's a case study. This was a session that was recorded live of one of the 2-day accelerators that I used to run pretty regularly for program members prior to COVID kicking in and kind of ruining everybody's party a little bit. And it was in response to a lot of discussion that was going on around the time about changes to our working environment. Now, funny enough, looking back at everything that COVID has done to the working environment in terms of remote working, and I think to some degree, kind of putting paid to the idea that there is a differentiation between sort of work time and home time. I think it's something nowadays, particularly if you're an entrepreneur or a practice owner, you have to work really hard, to put the smartphone down and not be on call all the time. But this was a really interesting case study of a firm based down in Tasmania who adopted the 5-hour workday. In other words, they would basically work from the morning up until just after lunchtime, and that was their working day. What was most interesting about it is Collins SBA, who were the firm who implemented it, were sort of very open about sharing not only what they had done and why they were doing it, but also they circled back later on and shared a lot about why they eventually decided to repeal it. Now, why would you share a case study? Why would I share a case study that I know was something that didn't work? Well, I think because sometimes it opens the Pandora's box and gives you real insight into how something that on paper sounds fantastic, working 5 hours a day, actually works in practice. And to cut to the chase on this, what they discovered is working 5 hours a day and doing that five days a week actually worked for some people and really didn't work for other people. It demanded a really fast pace of production, a really massive upgrade in production, and essentially, it wasn't even something they could roll out across the whole team. So if you are sort of wondering about what are some of the alternative models of working weeks or working hours or team engagement, particularly now where remote working is kind of in the crossfire a little bit, and you're wondering how it relates to advice businesses, this will be an episode where you can learn about the ideas that were put forward, how it was implemented, which I think is really interesting, and also the downsides that ultimately led to be taken back. That's not to say there isn't merit in looking for alternative ways of working. And I think this is something we're looking through right now. But it's really good to understand, the practical side, the mechanics, and the case study. One really important case study as it relates to a financial firm who went down this route, and what they learned along the way. So I hope you enjoy this. I hope you get a lot out of it. As always, if you would like to leave a review for this podcast, please make sure to leave your name so I can acknowledge you on the podcast, because it's always good to know what people get out of this. And also, like I do, I often look at podcasts, and the first thing I do is I look at the reviews and see whether it's something for me. So with that in mind, I'm going to step out of the way. I'm going to hand it over to Collins SBA, and we unpack their case study into the 5-hour workday. G'day there, Stuart Bell here today, and thanks for joining me. In today's webinar, I want to run you through something called the 5-hour workday. There's a lot of talk going on right now about sort of working habits, particularly around this 5-hour workday. It all stemmed from a book written by Tower Paddleboards in the US, where they adopted a 5-hour workday. And next thing you know, I'm pretty sure Denmark were doing it first, and then other firms. And we've got a whole discussion going on about whether it's possible for an advice firm or any sort of professional services firm to adopt a day where instead of working 8 hours a day or longer, we try and get everything done in 5 hours. So I guess this is a webinar with two real purposes behind it. The first is to really, if you're interested in whether or not this is right for you, I'm going to delve into the how, the why, the pros, the cons, what you need to look to make it work, and potentially you could take it then and implement it. But most people I've run this through, in particular the accelerator, it generated a lot of discussion. It generated a discussion around what we can learn from firms who've put this in place around maybe changing just certain elements of your working week, certain one or two things which may be able to sort of tweak in order to get more productive, potentially be more attractive to staff members out there, and a whole host more. So let's dive in. And I want you, as we go through this, just to be looking for not necessarily the whole model, although feel free to do so if you want to, but ask yourself this question: what could you take from this that would enable you to get more done, focus more on what counts, or adopt a few habits for you and your team to move things forward. So here's the big idea. The big question that was asked by myself and a bunch of people at the accelerator was, why do we work 9 to 5? What's the history of it? It seems such an arbitrary number. So where did it come from? Why 8 hours during the day? And the answer is really clear. It's this gentleman called Robert Owens. Robert Owens. He was a Welshman around about the turn of the century. He was a big sort of activist for the labor movement around about the time of, the Industrial Revolution. And he was the one that put forward the idea of an 8-hour workday and 8-hour workday and a 5-hour working week. And what he put forward is that this was kind of a catch cry. If you think about it, it was like his election piece, his memorable phrase that everybody would use: 8 hours labor, 8 hours recreation, and 8 hours rest. Nicely sort of puts together the whole 24-hour thing and makes it really easy. 8 hours at work, 8 hours doing stuff that isn't work, and then hopefully 8 hours sleeping in theory. But we also know that when we look at the numbers, that in most cases, and with these are averages, so averages tend to be, small fluctuations either side of the norm, tend to indicate that there's a lot of people who are going beyond and a lot of people who are sort of hitting the average. But we can see that over time, in most cases, except for obviously Denmark there, who are very big components of that, in most cases, our working week has increased from that standard 8 hours to something much bigger. But I guess there's something a bit more sort of insidious going on here. Because the reality is, with technology coming on board, it's not just about the hours we spend at work. The truth is, most of us, particularly business owners, are now working outside of the work environment as well. In other words, we're taking the iPhone home, we're doing a bit of work before we go to bed, we're thinking about when we're getting up. So it's not just about the hours spent at work anymore. There's more to it. The big truth is when you look under the bonnet, particularly with small business owners, you realize that the research is coming back and telling us that small business owners are working much, much longer hours than the average norm. Depending on which studies you look at, you can indicate that there are a certain portion, 16% in one of the studies, that are working more than 60 hours a week. 39% Gallup are saying are working a certain amount. But ultimately, it's not just about the work as well. It's about the pressure. Whether you've got employees or you don't have employees, there is higher risks. There's more challenges. There's more risk of burnout. Ultimately, the point is that there's this idea of an 8-hour workday, that everything would neatly start at 9, you come in, do your work, go for a bit of lunch, and then go home at 5. It's kind of become a bit of a fallacy. And this, for me, is a bit of a problem. So I think this is where this interest in the 5-hour workday has come from. As I said, it happened when Tower Paddleboards adopted a 5-hour workday. And off the back of it, Stephen Artsol wrote a book called The 5-Hour Workday, which, much like the 4-hour work week, for a whole bunch of different reasons, captures people's imagination. And interestingly, this got picked up by a firm in Tasmania called Collins SBA. Now, they're, I guess, a mid-sized accounting financial planning firm, about 28 staff members. But they implemented the 5-hour workday. And off the back of that, they were very liberal in sharing how this worked for them, what they did adopt, what they did to get it in place, and a whole bunch more. Now, what's interesting about this to me is we're not just talking about, some media agency or a sports company or a fashion company adopting this. We're not talking about a company that employs, ping pong tables and bean bags and Gen Y and all the rest of it and all that sort of stereotypical stuff. We're talking about a financial services firm, just like yours, that has clients, provides a wide range of professional advice, and they adopted it. So what can we learn from this? And that's what I wanted to do, dive in and share some of what came out of the research and the study, and essentially hope you can make a decision as to whether it might be for you or whether it's not, or whether there's bits to it you can adopt. So what's the opportunity here? Well, according to a lot of the research that's come back and the outcomes, one of the big opportunities for firms to adopt this is that it provides a significant incentive for capturing, top quality staff. I mean, truthfully, anything that can differentiate smaller businesses from their bigger companions, I think is a good thing. Ultimately, as a small business, you don't want to have to compete on salary. I've spoken to a lot of people about how to incentivize people coming in. And I think one of the common threads between people who are good at this is they deliberately, when they're bringing in people from, to become part of a business and grow a business and take on that entrepreneurial mindset, they deliberately don't pay the same rates as the corporates. the thinking behind this is if someone's going to come in and they're going to grow the business, you want to offer a portion of their sort of package, which is related to them taking a piece of the business over time, potentially via an option, and they are getting the benefit of working to grow the business with you. I guess the bit they put in the pot is by taking a portion of what they would get elsewhere, 66% of their salary, with the opportunity to build something and be part of a small business growing into a big business. This seemed to be the case with SBA Collins. One of the side effects, or one of the knock-on effects, as the article really clearly says, was that they had 7 new people start in the last month. And one of the differentiators was this 5-hour workday, in which case there was one graduate who'd actually accepted a role at a Big Four accounting firm, but they looked at it, they saw it as an innovative workplace, and they decided to go for the alternate option. And I guess if you're competing for talent, anything you can do to provide an incentive, something that's going to make people want to work for you instead of take the money, well, that can be a real benefit if you're at that stage where you're trying to put together a quality team and you're trying to put together a leadership team. The other benefit which clearly came out of it, which as you expect, was productivity. Ultimately, when you've got 5 hours to do 8 hours work, typically that's going to focus you pretty clearly on what's important. A lot of the work we did at the Focus Accelerator with in particular, the module Focus Formula was looking at that great book by Gary Keller, The One Thing. And it told some real truths about, how people behave when they're given less time to do things or less resources. The scope smallens. It's Parkinson's law kicks in and we tend to find a way to get things done. Colloquially, I've worked with a lot of mums. And typically when you're at a situation where you have a certain time frame to come in, to get your work done and go, it ends up with a lot of people, particularly single mums, as being incredibly efficient because they have to be by nature. So one of the benefits of doing this is when you actually get a model like this in place, it forces people to think differently. They can't operate the same way they did when they had 8 hours a day. And as a result, it breaks some paradigms. Interestingly, what came out of this, as a kind of a side effect, was less sick leave. Now, I don't know quite the reason for this. I reckon it might be because potentially there's less hours. Maybe people are getting out more. They're investing more in their health. They're spending more time with their family. Maybe it's because they're working at a faster pace. But ultimately, the numbers speak for themselves. That one of the benefits of doing the 5-hour workday or encouraging people to work shorter hours was people tend to, take less time off ill. But one of the big things I think that has been reported is it disrupts people's thinking. As we've mentioned before, Peter Thiel has this great sort of challenge he put out. It's a saying of his, which is, what would if you had to achieve everything you wanted to in your business in 6 months instead of 10 years because you had a gun to your head, and if you failed, boom, you'd have to do things differently. It would challenge the way that you did. And the point of this quote or bit of his comment is not because he actually believes that you can get 10 years worth of progress done in 6 hours or 6 months, but rather it does force you to think differently. It forces you to ask about what's important. It forces you to assess priorities. It forces you to assess what's that first domino that's going to knock over the others. And similarly, if you've got 5 hours to get things done, it challenge people to think differently about the way they work. There are challenges though. As with anything, we tend to hear about the positives, but the truth is the 5-hour work week comes with, downsides and cons that you've got to be aware of. The first thing, and Elliot talks a lot about it. Elliot from Collins SBA talks a lot about this. It is a faster pace. You're coming in, and that faster pace isn't for everybody. Some people like to work methodically. Some personality types, if you're looking at DISC, your S personality types prefer to work at a certain pace. C's as well. So that faster pace is definitely something to watch out for. And if it's, if it's not in the culture of your team or you personally to work at that faster pace, that's going to be a challenge. In actual fact, what's interesting is Artsol, the company's Artsol who wrote the book from the company Tower Paddleboards, indicated that initially the experiment produced very positive results, but over time some people left the company, and as a result they moved back to just implementing it in the summer months, which I find very interesting. The originators of it identified that it also had a detrimental side, and so they made changes. The second really key thing, probably out of all of these, is the big one. If you're soft on your metrics, if you have no way of measuring people's productivity and you couldn't tell whether somebody's getting their work done in 5 hours or 8 hours, you don't know what the outcome you're trying to drive, then this probably isn't something you want to adopt, because the metrics really, really matter. Ultimately, when you're putting in place a system like that, the excuse that I didn't have time to get it done is no longer relevant, because time is the thing that you're reducing. So I guess the clear message coming out of all of the research is that metrics are important. You need to get over the metrics, be able to measure them, get people to report on them, and get people to seriously be kept accountable for it. Otherwise, this system absolutely has no way of being monitored to work. The other thing that's really sort of key to point out is, in most cases, people have a period where they adopt a habit, particularly if they're driven to do it. We all know that if you get a point where you decide you no longer want to be unhealthy, or you no longer want to sort of be overweight, or you finally reach that point where you can no longer stand the situation or the thing that you want to get rid of, most of us are at that point motivated to change. And the same is true of working habits. If you're at a situation where there's no revenue coming into the business, or you've got a backlog of work and you reach that tipping point, at that point in time, you're motivated to get the work done, to get it out. But we know from human behavior that once the pain leaves the situation, once the discomfort is gone, I guess the rubber band effect kicks in. And this is one of the challenges. This is why a lot of people go on diets, lose weight, and then kick back in. It's not because the diet didn't work. It's because ultimately when the weight was gone, they went back to the previous behavior, which was the thing that got them overweight in the first time. So one thing to watch out for, particularly after you've implemented this for 6 months or whatever, is there is a natural point at which certain people may be encouraged to switch back to the original sort of habit. This is also a really big one. And during our discussion at Accelerator, a number of people sort of put up their hand and said, look, this wouldn't work for me because of the social impact. Look, there are certain people who will go to work and they'll love to have a discussion, and it's a big part of what they do. Other people are happy to get in there, put their head down, get the work done, and leave that till later. But ultimately, if you're going to put in place a 5-hour workday, one of the first things that's got to go is the social side of things. Now, it's interesting. I've spoken a lot about distraction and open plan offices. I'm not a fan of open plan offices because personally, I'm someone who likes to knuckle down and get work done and get it done in batches. But there is a place for it. Google's famous policy on their workplace is campfires and caves. The idea behind that is campfires are social areas, the open plan areas where people can meet, discuss ideas, intra-team, intra-departmental blending. But caves are also really important. They're that place that people can go in order to get some solitude, to do some good work, to, really get deep into a problem and focus. In a 5-hour workday, essentially most of your area of the office is going to be the cave, because fundamentally you've got to crunch down your working week by 60 or 70%. So obviously the impact of that is going to be social, which means either A, you've got to have people who are happy to leave that behind, or B, you've got to find time elsewhere in the working week to have that social integration. Let's talk about some of the principles that underpin the 5-hour day. I think the first is probably the most important to hit home. It's one that, for strange reason, kind of sinks under the carpet a bit. When people realize 5 hours, that's great. Same money. I'm going to get paid the same wage. But hold on, I've got the same responsibilities and less time. And this is the real kicker. One of the decisions that I think first has to be made first up is whether you're going to maintain the same hours. The purest form of this model is to give the same pay, the same bonuses, the same targets. But there is a point where you need to make people realize that ultimately you are asking them to do exactly the same, produce exactly the same outcomes in less time. Whether you do this as a choice, but that is the pure part of the model. And it's really important to get across to your team if you're going to get sort of buy-in for this. The second thing, which is really interesting about the model, which was the fact that regardless of how purely or how sort of closely they were following the model, there was a general rule that clients came first. The truth is that, it's no good sort of saying to clients, look, we can't meet you in the afternoon, or we can't do this beyond 1 o'clock because there's going to be no one in the office. Because ultimately, there is still an expectation, at least in most people's mind, that they should be able to make contact with the business and have a conversation with people beyond the hours of 1 o'clock. I mean, the truth is we live in a world where most people expect to be able to get through to a call center for a large corporation 24 hours. So the idea that you'd only be available for 5 hours in the morning, it's probably not going to work. So the principle here is most of the firms, in particular Collins, who adopted this, sort of made the realization that they had to very closely roster staff schedules. In other words, they had to share potentially reception duties and admin duties. And often they had to share it between different roles with the idea that whilst most of the business would be working, in this case in the morning between 9 till 1 till 2, there were certain people who would need to be rostered on the afternoon to take care of some of those inquiries. Principle number 3 was pretty clear. I mean, if anybody there's been so much out in the press about Elon Musk of late, but one of the things that came out was this memo to Tesla staff where he actually turned around and suggested that if they were in a meeting where they weren't adding value or the meeting seemed ridiculous or pointless or a walk of time, they should walk out. It indicated it was rude not to leave, as well it was rude to make someone stay and waste their time, which is a pretty hard-edged, hard-line piece, but very Elon Musk. And I guess this is the other point to make, that it's not a bad principle as a business overall. I see it, particularly in corporate, I see a lot of meetings that are held for no apparent reason. People walk in, there's no agenda, they kind of sit down, there's not really clear who's leading it, it's not really clear the outcomes, and it doesn't work. In particular, Collins talked about implementing two 15-hour stand-up meetings. Now, to get a meeting done, particularly if you've got a large team like they do in 15 minutes, it literally requires you to be brutal. When we do the mastermind session at our accelerators, we give people 5 minutes to sit in front of the room and share their biggest problem or biggest issue. And even then, I'll be honest, I'm probably not ruthless enough about the time because I really like the conversation. Well, imagine doing that 15 minutes. You've got to be clear about what you're talking about. And a great book on this is Death by Meeting, which talks about the 3 types of meetings and the fact that often people confuse, administration day-to-day meetings with strategic from tactical stuff. And the key to really getting efficient, I think, is people wander in and they're prepared. They know what they're going to talk about. They're going to get to the point. There's no story. There's no amble, and they get down to it. So getting ruthless about the structure and teaching people how to have those meetings and keeping them accountable for it is a key part of making this work. Principle 4 is, I guess, important for a couple of reasons. First thing, Collins and a number of other people who've rolled it out indicated this was something that when people came on board for the team, first of all, wasn't something they automatically got. It was something they had to earn. And in doing so, they had to learn the skills required to make it work. They had to learn how to manage their email. They had to learn how to manage the calendar. They had to learn how to carry out their meetings. They had to learn how to work more productively. They had to learn how not to, be a distractive force in the office and fit in with the overall, not just the culture, but the working system around them. So in many cases, if you're going to implement something like this, realize there's 2 things. First thing, there's probably some skills that you need to teach people how to do. You might need a operating rhythm in your business, a playbook system, an email management system, a way of managing a diary, structured agendas, all that sort of stuff. But in addition, the key shift here is to make it realize that this wasn't something that was given. It was something that was earned. And at any point, if it wasn't working, if clients are being impacted or people just weren't getting it, it was taken away almost immediately. The final point 5, although it says point 4 here, harks back to that original rosting thing. Above all else, the protection has to be there for clients. One of Collins's, rules of rollout is when they were measuring the metrics super closely, the agreement was that at any point, if they spotted any drop in productivity, if they spotted any impact at all on the clients, in other words, work wasn't getting done for clients weren't getting back to, people weren't getting looked after, they cut the whole thing straight away. It was a general rule. So in your rostering, in monitoring client work, in making sure that people are, being dealt with, got back to, helped, and essentially you're delivering on your promise, the primary thing that sits over it is that understanding that if this isn't working for the client, no matter how well it's working for the team and the business, it's got to go. So let's just dive in quickly to the model. It's really quite simple. If we think of the working day as being 8 till roughly 5 or 6 o'clock, the standard start time for most people was generally agreed as being between 8 to 9 a.m. So you could generally come in at any time between 8 and 9, but then there was the 100% attendance point between 9 and 1. Now, this was important because this is generally understood at the point at which everybody would be there for collaboration, for those quick meetings, and for any communication pieces that need to happen, which meant that the standard finish time for people in the business, depending on when they started, was around 1 till 2. Beyond that was seen as overflow time. In other words, if you had additional work that needed to get done to meet client needs, that was when it happened. The goal was for everybody to walk out at 2, but again, it was very much based on outcomes. And if you didn't get your work done, it was not acceptable. to leave it undone. In addition, the model also requires really close email management. If you'd like some information about email management, there's a module we have which is called the Gatekeeper, which talks about our email management, talks about our diary management system, as well as those 2 15-minute stand-up meetings a week, which typically, depending on who you are, the one thing talks about having a sort of a bit of a debrief on a Sunday as a personal individual, but typically you'd want everybody to come in clear on what they're going to talk about for that 15-minute in the morning on a Monday, and then again on a Friday, plus a fully agendaed thing to make it work. So I want you to do me a quick favor. If you've listened to this, we've given you a quick run through. I've given you the pros, the cons, the how it works, the things to watch out for. If you're thinking about implementing this, I would actually love it if you'd email me through and say, we're going to give it a go. We had a couple of businesses when I first ran through this accelerator who indicated they were going to give it a go, on a specific day, on a Friday, or they were going to give it a go for a couple of weeks in the summer. If this is you, let me know, because I'd love to understand a few things, like when is it going to start? What are your metrics going to be? And how are you going to measure success? But even if you didn't, take a moment to ask the question, is there anything in there which potentially you could adopt that would help you make more productive, even if it wasn't 5 hours a day? It could be something around your metrics. It could be something about adopting this for 1 or 2 days. It could be getting your meeting agendas in order. It could be doing more training with the team around email management or productivity, getting that common operating system, getting some structure around what gets done in the morning and what gets done in the afternoon. One of my favorite stories around productivity is a French firm, I wish I could remember their name, who have an answer phone. If you phone it up, it simply says, the morning is for thinking, the afternoon is for doing. It's the morning, so please phone back later. Again, structuring your mornings. The One Thing by Gary Keller talks a bit about, structure your mornings for doing the one thing. That might be something that you want to look at as well. Let's talk about the how. If you're going to implement this, what are the steps? Well, there's really an action plan behind it. Step 1 is recommended that you get agreement. If you're going to do this, you've got multiple people in the firm or even influencers. It's really important that everybody understands the pros and cons. Maybe give them a copy of this and also explore reasonable scenarios and contingencies. So what if this happens? What if half of our workforce can't turn up? What if we get so far behind? What if the office, computers blow up? In other words, planning for things that might happen is better than having to think, what do we do with our time and having to communicate the changes? Collins recommended putting together a slide pack outlining it, which could be useful when you're communicating to other people later on. The second thing you need is clear standards, measures, limits, productivity sort of windows, at which point, if it goes below a certain period of time, if our pipeline falls below, 6 weeks or whatever it might be. In other words, what are the negative service impacts at which point you would stop the trial, diagnose and potentially fix. Plan logistics, get the rostering, 2 overlapping 5-hour shifts, morning and afternoon, and potentially combine certain functions. You need to make a call on the REM as well, as to whether you're going to keep in place the same salaries, how that impacts KPIs, whether that is, right for the team. As I said, I ran out of time is not an excuse under this model. Collins said they started sharing this 6 months before they actually started, because they wanted people to get used to it. And as a result, one of the things that came is expecting resistance. Some people are not going to like it, Everybody loves change until that change involves them. And this is a big change. And finally, as we said before, the metrics are so key. You are not going to know whether this is a success. And as a result, you won't know whether to continue it or cease it if you don't have metrics that are going to tell you whether people are actually getting stuff done in their 5 hours or whether, it's just not the right solution for you. So if you're going to implement this, let me know. So there you have it, the 5-hour workday. I hope you took a lot out of it. I know when I presented it to the room of program members, it got some really interesting discussion going about things they'd tried and hadn't worked, things they had tried that had worked, and ultimately where we all wanted to get to in terms of our working environment. And I think there is so much to discuss here, particularly right here and now, where efficiency and capacity management and getting the best out of team members is absolutely something that's on the agenda more so than not more so than it's ever been, but definitely it's a focus more so than it has been maybe 10 years ago. One final thing I want to mention. This podcast is one of a number of podcasts that have been recorded down the years. We call them masterclasses. Some of them are interviews, as you would know if you've listened to a few. Other of them, like this one, are kind of taking training modules that I've created and sharing them more widely, which has been something I've wanted to do for a while. It made no sense to me to have all of this, 100 plus modules sitting in the background and not getting out there and being shared. It's also one of the reasons that about 2 months ago, we launched something called our Practice Success Portal. It's a free portal in which we provide access to all of our masterclass recordings. There's also a module in there called Practice Success, which showcases sort of 5 really important pieces of training that I put together and almost a foundation for a lot of the work that I do with practices. It also has the opportunity, and one of the reasons for me creating it is it's given me the opportunity to bring together clients I've used to work with my current clients, and also people like you, like listeners to this podcast or subscribers, in one place where we can share and engage and create something which is a bit like a community, I guess. If you would like to be part of it, just head over to our website, ourdare.com.au. You should see a menu item there called Free Portal. Just jump in there, check it out, and if you like it, just fill in the form and we'll get you onto this portal and you can start to see the full range of everything that you may have listened to here, but you get the visuals as well, because each and every podcast that you listen to actually started out live as a webinar. That's it from me. I hope you got a lot out of this week's episode, and as always, stay tuned for the next episode of The Finnovator. Thanks again.